Good morning. This is your math sensei, Mr. Spensei, and this lesson will be on solving inequalities. But first, we're going to review solving equations briefly, just to keep in practice, because we'll use those same skills as we solve inequalities. So I look at this equation, cut it in half. -6, this side is equal to this side because it's balanced and it actually has an equal sign to remind us of that. We go through our checklist. We don't have parentheses, so we don't do distributive property. We have no like terms to combine. The variables are all on one side. So we're down to step 4 where we move constants. And we do that by opposite operation. The goal is to get this variable m by itself. We happen to have two constants, is the -6 and the -4. But the -4 is the one that's on the wrong side, so we have to move it. So how do you do a -4? You move it by adding 4. So this drops off, and we end up with -2 equals m over 2. All right. Well, now that fraction lines means we're dividing, so we need to undo division, and we do that by multiplication. So this goes away. We know 2 times 2 is 4, but let's check our signs out. We have a +2 and a -2. That leaves me with a -4. So our answer is m equals -4. Don't think I'm going to have enough room for this, but we'll try to squeeze it in anyway. So cut the equation in half. We do have parentheses, so we're going to have to distribute. And we distribute using multiplication. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times -4 is -8r. -2, 2 times 1. 2 times 3 is 6. Oh, this is -2r. Excuse me, -2r minus 6 minus 4. I do have like terms, none on this side, but I do right here, so I'm going to have to combine those two, but nothing to combine on this side, so I can just write it down. 2 minus 8r equals -2r. This becomes -10. If the signs are the same, add the two numbers and keep the sign. So our next thing is I need to move variables. Well, this 2r is on the wrong side because I always want variables on the left, numbers on the right. So I'm going to add 2r. And this goes away. And I end up with 2 minus 6r equals -10. All right, we need to move constants. And I have two constants. I have a 2 and a -10. But the 2 is on the wrong side, so I need to move it because I need to move it away from the variable to the other side of the equal sign. And this becomes -6r equals -12. These are side by side, so they're being multiplied, so I need to do the opposite, which is divide. And we're going to have r equals 2, but in this case, once again, we have two negatives, so we're left with a positive, so r equals a +2. All right. Well, when we had an equation, we had something that said this equals this. So this side weighs, if it were a seesaw, this side weighs just as much as this side. Each side is balanced perfectly. All right. When we have an inequality, we're saying one side is bigger than another side. All right. That compares the relative. So an inequality is a mathematical sentence that compares the relative size of two values that are not equivalent, or typically they're not equivalent. So when we graph, if it's a less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to, or even if it's an equal to, we use a solid dot. The solid dot means it includes it. All right. However, if it's a less than or a greater than, we use a hollow, which means it gets really, really close, but it doesn't include that particular value. So, and one other thing to keep in mind, we're going to want the variable on the left every single time when we graph. It just makes things so much better. So it says x is less than -3. So I need to go to -3, and it's a less than. Well, less than, oh, that gets a hollow. and it's pointing in this direction. So really, this goes on to negative infinity in that direction. Then it says we have this x is less than or equal to 7. Well, 7, it has a line underneath it, so it gets a solid. So it points off in this direction, because if this follows the same direction as that, as the way it points, and goes to negative infinity. And this is why we always want to have the variable on the left, because it makes it so much easier to graph. This says x is greater than negative 5. Well, I see that it's a greater than, so it's going to get a hollow at negative 5, and it's pointing to the right. And it could be any value greater than negative 5, and this means it goes to positive infinity. And finally, we have x is greater than or equal to 2. So I'm going to go to 2, and it has a line underneath. So this means it's going to get a solid and includes 2. And once again, it goes off to infinity. So hollow gets really close to negative 3, but does not include 3. This does include 7. Gets really close to negative 5, but does not include negative 5. This one includes 2. All right. So, and remember, less than is hollow, less than or greater than is hollow, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, or equal to are all solids. All right, so let's solve some equations. So if the variables on the right side of the inequality, flip the entire inequality, including the inequality sign before graphing. All right, the variable's on the wrong side, so I'm going to flip it. And I also have to flip the sign. So negative 16p and 32, and this sign needs to change directions. So it's facing that way. Now, it also says when you multiply or divide by a negative, you must flip the inequality sign. But let's go ahead and do our work first. We're going to divide, and this is going to give me p, and this is going to be negative 2. Well, we know it's going to be a hollow, but because I divided by a negative, I have to flip the sign. So it's no longer facing this way. It changed directions, and it's flipping this way. So it's a greater than. Once again, I need to rewrite this thing. So I'm going to rewrite this as n minus 6, and it's pointing in that direction. All right. Now, I'm going to move the 6 by adding 6, and I end up with n is less than or equal to 14. Now, I didn't flip the sign because I didn't divide or multiply by a negative. Now, at 14, this is a 14, so it's going to get a, and it has a line underneath, so it gets a solid. And I draw the arrow in the way it's facing. So this is going to negative infinity, and this one over here was going to positive infinity. So continuing on, negative 9x is less than or equal to negative 90. Well, I need to move that negative 9, it's side by side, so I have to divide. And this is going to be 10 because we have two negatives, positive 10. And this has a line under it, so I know because it has a line under it, and it gets a solid. But I divided by a negative, and if I divide by a negative, I have to flip the sign so it becomes x is greater than. So greater than or equal to, and this is going all the way to positive infinity. It doesn't stop. Here I'm dividing by 4, and I undo division because the fraction line means I divide. I undo division by doing multiplication. And this becomes n is greater than or equal to negative 16. Now let's talk about that real quickly. What I'm multiplying by is a positive 4. And because I'm multiplying by a positive 4, I don't flip it. And by the way, I used the wrong sign. This was a greater than, so this needs to stay a greater than. So we're at negative 16, no line underneath, so we get a hollow, and we're facing this direction. So it's going off to positive infinity. All right. So we can do this in one step or two steps. I'm going to do this in one step just because I think it's easy. The one step is I'm multiplying by -2/5, so I have to undo it by doing division. And division is dividing fractions, easy as pie, flip it and multiply. So 5 over -2. And this is going to be 5 over -2. This goes away. And we're going to go to the calculator. And oops, that's the phone, not a calculator. Parentheses, -4, close parentheses. 5 divided by -2, close those parentheses. And we get 10. Now, I multiplied by negative. If I multiply by a negative, I have to flip this sign because this has because of this negative right here. Not because of this one, but because of this one, I had to flip the sign. So I end up getting a hollow at 10 facing towards negative infinity. All right, here I'm going to flip the equation. So now I have -12a is less than -168. I'm going to divide both sides by my coefficient of -12. And I'm going to get a, and I'm going to get 14. And there's no line underneath, so I know it's a hollow at 14. But I also have to flip the sign because I'm dividing by that -12. So it's going this way to positive infinity. All right, we have some long problems to work next. 4 long problems that involve inequalities. Well, I said rewrite it. I said rewrite it when you have the variable um, on the wrong side, on the left side. But if I have variables on both sides, don't rewrite it. Just solve it. So once again, we're going to start off with the distributive property first. So 3 times 1 is 3x. 3 times 4 is 12. And this one changes the sign, so -x plus 4. And then over here we have x plus 1 plus 1 plus 6x. At this point, I can combine like terms. So I can combine the x's. 1x and 6x gives me 7x, and 1 plus 1 is 2. So these combine to give me 2, this and this combine to give me 7x. Over here, 3x minus 1x. 3x minus 1x is 2x, and -12 plus 4 is -8. All right, the next thing we need to do is I always want to get variables on the left and numbers on the right, especially important with inequalities. So I'm going to subtract this 2x because it was a plus 2x. This becomes 0, and this is 5x plus 2 is less than or equal to -8. I need to move my constant, and I happen to have 2 of them. This is the one that I need to move because I need to isolate that variable. I need to get it by itself. So I'm going to -2 from both sides. And now I have 5x is less than or equal to -10. Divide both sides by 5. All right, now this case, I'm dividing by a positive. Because I'm dividing by a positive, I do not need to switch. And -10 divided by 5 is -2. So my answer is x is less than or equal to -2. My arrow is pointing to the left. It has a line. A line makes it a solid, pointing to the left. So I draw this to the left, and it's going off to negative infinity. All right. We have distributed property because we have parentheses. So 2 times 1 is 2, 2 and 2 times 4 is 8. So -8r less than. 2 times 1 is -2. 2 times 3 is 6. Oops. -2r minus 6 minus 4. On this side, I don't have any like terms, so I can copy it down. 2 minus 8r. This side, I do. I can combine the negative 6 and negative 4, and I have negative 2r minus 10. The next step is I need to move variables. Now, we always want to have our variables on the left. Makes a big difference on inequalities. So moving the 8r is already there, so I need to move the 2r. Well, it's a negative, so I need to do the opposite operation or inverse, which is a plus 2r. So this is going to be 2 minus 6r is less than negative 10. The next thing I need to do is I need to move this 2. Well, this is a positive 2. In order to move it, I need to do a negative 2. And oh, I should back up real quickly. I have constants, and these are my constants. And I need to isolate that variable. So I need to move the constant closest to the variable, because this is a plus 2, so I do it by a minus 2. So I have negative 6r is less than negative 12. I need to get rid of my coefficient of negative 6 by dividing by negative 6. Be careful here. I'm dividing by a negative, so this sign switches. And 12 divided by 6 is 2. And remember, a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So I'm going to go to positive 2. It's going to get a hollow because there's no line underneath. It's pointing in this direction and goes to positive infinity. All right, we have two more problems for this lesson. So we always want the variables on the left-hand side, numbers on the right, and in this case, we do have distributive properties. So we have negative 5x. This negative makes this a minus x and a minus 2. This makes this a negative 5 minus 5x plus 3. We need to combine like terms, and we have them. We can combine the x's on this side. So negative 5x minus 1 more x gives me 6x's. And over here, I have a negative 5 and a positive 3. Those combine and give me negative 2 minus 5x. So I'm going to move my variables to one side. So I'm going to add 5 to this side, because I always want the variables on the left. And now I have negative 1x minus 2 is less than negative 2. I have two constants. And remember, we want the numbers on the right, so I need to move this negative 2's to isolate this x. So to move the negative 2, I do the opposite or inverse, which is a plus 2. And now I have negative 1x is less than 0. And it looks like we're done, except this is a negative 1, and I can't stop there. So I'm going to have to divide by negative 1. Well, anytime you multiply or divide by negative, you have to switch the sign. So this becomes x is greater than 0. It's a greater than symbol, so this is a hollow pointing in that direction. Okay? Oh, and this goes to positive infinity. Last problem. I have to distribute. We want variables on this side, numbers on this side. 6 times 1 is 6, so this is negative 6 minus 12x. Greater than or equal to 6 times 2 is 12x minus 6 plus 2x. So combine like terms. Well, there's nothing to combine here, but I can combine the 12x and the 2x on this side. So on this side, I can't combine anything, so I'll just copy it down. And as I just said, we can combine the 12x and 2x. 12x plus 2x is 14x minus 6. Next thing we need to do is move variables. Well, we always want variables on the left. So I need to move the 12x is where it belongs, the 14x is not. So I need to subtract 14x. So negative 6 minus 26x greater than or equal to negative 6. I have constants on both sides. If I need to move the -6, I do that by adding 6. And -26x is greater than or equal to 0. The last thing I need to do is divide by my coefficient to get rid of it. Now be careful. I'm dividing by a negative. If I'm dividing by a negative, I have to flip the sign. So this sign switches and becomes x is less than or equal to 0. Because there's a line under it, it gets a solid and it's facing this way. And that means it's going to negative infinity. All right, this concludes that lesson on inequalities. Appreciate you watching. Look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thank you.